Got the club going up on a Tuesday. Got your girl in the cut she Tuesday. Club going up on a Tuesday. Got your girl in the cut she Tuesday. Club going up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pina Colada Tuesdays. This is a very special episode of the Slam Drunks podcast presented by Bias Boston Sports. I am your host, Nick Piccioni. Alongside me is my wingman, Pete Bukowski. How you doing tonight, Pete?
Doing pretty good on the eve of America's birthday.
Yes, happy 4th of July. Ryan, our designated driver. How are you tonight, my friend?
I'm swell, my friend. My friends.
Yes, friends, lords, Vader. So we got a show tonight. We got a fucking show tonight. If you watched last week's episode, which a lot of you didn't, you might have forgotten that we were planning to not do another show until Friday, but considering all of the NBA news, we decided that we should probably do one before it all goes stale. So here we are on a Tuesday night. Pete, what are you drinking tonight?
I have courtesy of Stowe, Vermont, Von Trapp Vienna. Pretty good. It's a microbrew. It's not bad. If you guys are ever up in like central Vermont, definitely recommend it. They got good food too.
That is wonderful. And as it is the 3rd of July, I have myself Budweiser Freedom Reserve because I'm a slave to corporate products, as is the American dream. But before I get to drink this, going over final takes last week, I got one question wrong. I did, and I was really, really close to getting them all right. Kawhi Leonard did not get traded, as I predicted. What was the second one? The point is, the one I got wrong was that Uncle Drew did not make it into the top 3 of the box office. He was just $4 million out. He was so close to beating Sicario, that second-rate fucking sequel of a movie. So now I'm going to have to drink a full one of these before I get to enjoy the sweet, sweet nectar of the red lager of the Freedom Reserve. So while I do this, in my shame, I'm going to let Pete get started. Pete, LeBron James is a Los Angeles Laker. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised at all, and I don't think anybody really should be. These were the rumors that were going down the entire time. He's definitely at a different point in his life, I think, now, too, that he is looking towards the future more as he gets older. It's not all about basketball. He has business ventures that are in LA that he wants to pursue. He has kids that he wants to put in school there. From all we've heard, his wife, too, is a big fan of living out there. So it kind of makes sense in that sense. But from a basketball perspective, I know we're going to get into it. But from a basketball perspective, I don't get it at all. It's a bizarre move for me. The moves that they've subsequently made now, I mean, they're signing Rondo, they're signing Stevenson, they're signing all these guys that are second and third tier free agents to these deals where, yes, they're one season, but in my opinion, I think they're kind of throwing this year away. They're going to be a 7th, 8th seed in the Western Conference. They're going to get knocked out by Golden State or Houston. And then maybe next season is when we're really going to see them make another type of move. But right now, nothing. It's bizarre to me.
It is strange. It's predictable, but also completely strange. I'll let Ryan go ahead as I finally get to taste the sweet freedom of the reserve. Ryan, go.
Yeah, as Pete said, there's a lot of business opportunities out there in the movie business in Hollywood, the glamour. And from a basketball perspective, this is the first time LeBron's really been in a big market. So that's also an attraction point for him. For the roster standpoint, like Lance Stevenson, Rondo, Lonzo, those guys aren't really shooters from the outside. And for LeBron to be successful, you have to surround him with three-point shooting. And until they do that, like Pete said again, they're going to be a lower seed in the Western Conference, and they're going to get taken out in the first round.
Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed with what's been going on with the Lakers since they signed him. It was pretty clear early on that LeBron was going to LA. Even when his people had the meeting with Philly, everyone's like, ooh, maybe he'll go to Philly. He couldn't even be fucked to show up to that meeting. That was not a real meeting. So we all knew that he was going to LA. And I don't remember which one you said it because I have a lizard brain, but they are throwing this year away. Like, this year is a complete wash. They're signing a bunch of players to get them up to the salary cap floor who they can fill out their roster with and then dump next year so they still have 2 max contracts. But a lot of the guys that were supposed to be max deals for next offseason have already signed. Like Paul George was supposed to be a Laker, and he's staying. We're going to talk about him later, but he's staying in Oklahoma City. Like he's not sticking around. Like he's not available. He can't become a Laker until like 2021 or whenever it is. So it's and the other thing, along with all of these players being second tier players, a lot of them just straight up hate LeBron James. like factually speaking, Lance Stevenson has been a thorn in LeBron James' side for years. He does not like LeBron James. Rondo famously took that picture of with the woman wearing a LeBron James is a bitch shirt like 6 years ago. So it's going to be a really interesting fit. I think it's primed to be an absolute disaster of a year between those three. Add JaVale McGee and his negative IQ, and LeVar and Lonzo Ball. This is a powder keg, and it's going to be so much fun if it blows up.
I know a lot of people have talked about it. There's no way Lonzo can stay now, right? I mean, Rondo is the exact same player as Lonzo Ball. I mean, I don't understand how they could both be on a team simultaneously. They're the exact same player, except Rondo is older and, I mean, probably better. I don't get it.
Well, here's the thing. Like, do we really trust Magic Johnson to make decisions on the roster?
Yeah.
Like, honestly? Like, would you be like? I wouldn't be surprised if he had no plan. He's just like, oh, I might as well have 2 because 2 is better than 1, right? Like that's some Magic Johnson logic. Like he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. I think the situation's been mismanaged. I am hopeful that they become interesting and competitive because nothing's more fun than when the Celtics and Lakers are in an arms race. But of course, I don't think it fucking matters. Because we'll get into it in a little bit, but the Warriors just keep doing what they do. But on LeBron James, I get the signing. The thing that was strange for me was there was a 4-year deal. Like 4 years is a long time for him to commit, especially since he's been 1-1s for I don't know how long in Cleveland and Miami. Like he's been opting out, or he's had the ability to leave every year for a multitude of years now, and now he's staying in LA in a roster which is basically just a slightly worse version of Cleveland's last year. So I don't know exactly what he's thinking in terms of signing a 4-year deal. I guess it was a way to kind of show real superstars like Kawhi and Paul George that, hey, I'm here to stay. Like if you come, I'm gonna be here. I'm not gonna leave you like I left. Name every single player I've ever played with before, but I mean, I guess if you're in Cleveland and the movies that you make are train wreck, maybe moving to LA will help you in your endeavors, not make such shit movies. But I don't know. I understand why he did it, but I don't. It wasn't for basketball, and that kind of disappoints me.
Like I said, I think he may have. I know people have said this too when I've been watching it. Maybe he's just happy with the way that his career has gone, and he's kind of on the back nine and he's not going 100 miles an hour anymore. And if that's the case, I mean, the Lakers aren't necessarily the worst thing in the world to go to. You're still making the max contract, and now all those different opportunities are open to you. But like we said, from a straight basketball perspective, it sucks, especially with, like you said, again, with Magic at the helm. I mean, he may not surround LeBron with the right guys. And if that's the case, I mean, it's just a waste of the next, 5 years maybe he has left?
Especially considering, like, he is in his mid-30s. Like, he's not young anymore. Like, you could tell in the playoffs that he was starting to wear out near the end of it during the Celtics series, and especially after Game 1, and there was no reason left. You're basically mortgaging one of his remaining good years to get him into LA and surrounding him with shit and piss. Like I don't get it. Speaking of things I don't fucking get, let's talk about DeMarcus Cousins. DeMarcus Cousins was set to be a max player before he tore his Achilles, and probably still could have been. Instead, he decides to sign for $5.3 million, the luxury taxpayers mid-level exception, to go play for the fucking Golden State Warriors. I don't know about you guys, but I'm fucking devastated. Like, it's not even that, like, the rumors were that he might go to the Celtics, because one, those were overblown, and two, I don't know if I really wanted him, to be honest. But because, like, it's the Warriors. No matter how dysfunctional it gets there, they're gonna win because that's how basketball works. And so basically, the NBA season's already over. Like even more so than it was last year. We all knew who was going to the finals and who was winning it last year. Even though it became a little bit interesting as June rolled around, we all knew it was going to happen. And now we know who's going to win, and it doesn't matter who they play because they're going to win, and that sucks. Ryan, go.
Well, DeMarcus Cousins is a very talented player, but for me, there's 3 red flags. And it starts with him, his reputation of being a bad locker room guy. He's coming off an Achilles injury. And 3, what I've noticed from the games of him over the years is that he seems to be out of shape at times. So at the end of games, he starts to fade away and disappear at times. And he's not really a winner. And until he proves that, which is what he's trying to do with this 1-year deal with the Warriors, he'll still have that label attached to him.
Yeah, he's definitely on the All-NBA loser team. Like him and Melo are captains, and then you could fill out the rest after that. Like he's a career loser. But it's the fucking Warriors. It doesn't matter how much of a loser you are. If he can disrupt that team enough to make them not win the finals, then he should go into the Hall of Fame for that. Like honestly, like that would be the most impressive feat in basketball history if he could ruin that team because they're the fucking Monstars. Like honestly, this is like LeBron wants to be in Space Jam 2. You're living Space Jam 2. Like this is it. This is the movie. So it's really frustrating for fans of the NBA, and especially fans of a team that's like the Celtics, who are supposed to be competitive. Where now, even if he is a problem in the locker room, you're probably not going to be all that competitive. What do you think about this, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in the sense that he's coming off of a major injury. So I don't think – I know you said before that he could have maybe gotten a max deal still. I don't think that that's probably true. I think he'd probably go for like a 1-year type of deal, prove it type of deal, and then get his max contract after that. But still, he is a perfect fit for what they're trying to do. He's a big guy that can space the floor. He can grab rebounds. He's athletic. I know he disappears a little bit at the end of games, but when you have Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, you don't really need to be there at the end of games. So, I mean, it's interesting, like you guys said, the perspective of how he's going to mesh with some of the guys, specifically Draymond Green. But I don't think, like you said, I mean, if he's able to disrupt them enough where they don't win the finals this year, then he should go in the Hall of Fame for that. Tying it back into the Celtics, though, I mean, I'm more concerned and pissed off that Danny Ainge didn't even make a formal offer to him by the time that he already agreed to a contract with the Warriors. I don't understand. There was interest from the player to go there. So why wasn't there that interest back? I don't understand why the Celtics didn't want that guy, because he fits perfectly with what the Celtics are trying to do, and he's the type of player that they need. I mean, he's just a little bit below Anthony Davis, and that's the guy who I think they've been going after and will continue to go after for the next couple of years until he becomes available. So I don't understand, and especially if they offered him 5.3 and he took that, what's to say if you didn't offer your mid-level exception, which is at 8.3, he wouldn't have said yes to that. It's perplexing to me.
It is a little bit odd. One thing that I think hasn't been talked about much because I think it's fairly new. I'm pretty sure it was Mark Stein had a report out that at the end of the year, the Pelicans offered him 2 years at 20 per, and he turned them down, and they took the offer off the table. So he had the money offered to him in a place that he apparently liked playing with Anthony Davis, who he liked playing with, and he turned it down, and then he went to the Warriors. And to be honest, like, I know that the reports were the Celtics were interested in him. I think it was more that he had interest in the Celtics, like you said, Pete.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. I don't want him because he's such an a-hole, and that's a personal preference. Like, I know he's such an incredible talent, but he's such a douchebag. Oh my god! And you saw the video that surfaced after he signed of him when he was still in Sacramento saying "fuck the Warriors."
Yeah.
You see that? That made me fucking laugh. That was a happy time and a dark storm cloud for me, man. But like, fuck. Like, what do we do for you? Like this does have an effect on the Celtics past just the NBA being done for the year. And it's what it opens up for them. Because now Rajon Rondo, who Anthony Davis is a very big fan of, and DeMarcus Cousins, the man whose number and name he wore on the back of his All-Star jersey, they're both gone now. Anthony Davis is probably a little bit pissed, even though he was apparently part of the Julius Randle recruiting pitch for him to come to New Orleans. He's probably not going to be happy going back to being a losing team. If the year goes badly for him, he might start to actually ask for a trade, because he's never asked for a trade. It's always been assumed that he wants out of New Orleans because it sucks, because factually speaking, New Orleans sucks as a basketball franchise. So that's an option that opens up. It also means that the arms race for Kawhi Leonard, it could be one of two things. You can either completely die because this year is null and void. No matter what you do, you're not going to get anywhere. Or it could mean that the Lakers are more committed to trying to get him. Or the one thing that I saw that made me almost drive off the road was that, maybe they trade Klay Thompson for Kawhi Leonard because they're both in the last year of their deal. And if that happens, like, do we even watch? Does NBA TV just have to shut down for the year? Like, is there a season, Ryan? What would happen?
No. It's all these moves.
Good take. Good take.
No, I'm not shutting down the NBA. Even though the Warriors are loaded and all this drama around the league, I'm still a big believer. Don't call me a green teamer, but I'm still liking the Celtics team next year. I think they give the Warriors a run for their money, and the Rockets are still a good team as well. So I think there's still teams that can compete with the Warriors, and I'm not going to count this season.
You think the Celtics is one of them?
I do. I think they are.
So, a little fun behind-the-scenes fact for all you guys who aren't part of the show. If Ryan were to take his camera and pan it down his body, you would see him knuckle deep in a basketball with Lucky the Leprechaun's face on it, and his little Vader, his little Darth, hanging out of his shamrock shorts. But I'm just giving him a little shit. Ryan is very optimistic, which is kind of what we need right now. Sometimes you need a designated driver for life, not just the bar. And so Ryan's my little fucking guardian angel tonight. My God. Oh God, this is what the Warriors do to me. Like I have some friends that are Warriors fans. They're gonna watch this and they're just gonna be eating my tears and just injecting them into their ass like it's heroin. But this shit has to be said. Like this is fucking terrible for the more akin to the fucking WWE than any other actual sports leagues. Like the important parts of the NBA are the drama and the storylines. Like one of the most important parts of LeBron signing in, or the most publicized things around Twitter, along with LeBron signing in LA, was talking about the new storyline that, now Kyrie's in Boston, LeBron's in LA, the rivalry's back on. Like, it wasn't about the actual basketball. It was about the storyline and who's going to face who now. Like it's basically, and with the outcomes predetermined at this point, it's scripted as fuck. Like, it's really upsetting to watch a league that I do enjoy watching turn into a soap opera, more so than it ever has been.
I agree.
Thank you, Pete.
You're welcome.
Thank you for enabling me.
Like you were talking first, you were talking about Anthony Davis, and I agree with what you were talking about. Like, and that my hot take was that I think that the Celtics are probably going to stand pat, not go after. We'll talk about Jimmy Butler in a bit. Not go after Kawhi Leonard overly, at least, so that they can maintain their assets to at some point get Anthony Davis, which is probably the right move. But I've been doing a little research on it because of the Rose Rule. The Red Sox, Jesus Christ, the Celtics can't even trade for Anthony Davis until next offseason. So if that theoretically is what they're going to do, they need to be 150% certain that they're going to be able to re-sign Kyrie Irving next season. And I'm not necessarily there right now with that team. It's actually a huge concern for me. Looking forward, I mean, do you want to swap out Anthony Davis for Kyrie Irving? I mean, I would, but I feel like you need another piece then. Like Gordon Hayward being your second best player, Jason Tatum being your third until he develops. Like, for me, I'm kind of in a win mode now. So whatever the Celtics need to do now to win, I'm cool with it. You know, so if they want to go out and get Kawhi and they have to trade Jalen for it, I mean, that's just something that they got to do. And if that means giving up Jalen, who may be a better player in the future, I say fuck it, do it, because the certainty that you have right now, you're not going to have in a season. So for me, looking at what the Warriors are doing, I feel like the Celtics, they have to do something to answer to that, or they're just going to be Cleveland of last season and losing 4 games in the finals.
Yeah, I would like the Celtics to make a move. We'll move into Jimmy Butler now. It seems like a natural sort of jumping off point.
Nice transition. Nice.
Yeah, you just kind of served it up there.
Nice.
And I slammed it home.
Yeah, I saw that. Nice.
Fuck. So Jimmy Butler has been in the news a couple times recently. First, it was he wasn't sure if he wanted to play with Wiggins because he questioned his work ethic and defense on the team between Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns. And this has kind of been a pattern for Jimmy Butler. He's said the same thing about the Bulls back when he was still on there and D Wade was there and they were trying to develop something and it turned out to be a complete fucking dumpster fire, but whatever. He said it a couple times. This has been a common theme for him of he's kind of dogging his teammates and not thinking that they are performing up to his standards. And I don't know, at some point, is that a you problem or is that just happens to be you join a bunch of shitty teammates, but whatever. He apparently might. So if he's the problem if he has a problem with Wiggins and a problem with Towns, then the easy thing is for Minnesota to cut bait with him instead of one of the other two. So, especially since he has the same Kyrie deal where he can opt out after next year or sign a player option. So he might be available. And if skill level has anything to say about it, he should be significantly less costly than a Kawhi Leonard. So is this someone that you would want the Celtics to look into maybe getting, Ryan?
It depends. I mean, I don't know where he would fit
Daddy.
in the current makeup of this roster. Let's say you add Jimmy Butler from a trade. I'm assuming you send over Jaylen Brown. Is that really worth doing?
My thought is, I don't know. Like Jaylen Brown was the asking price for Jimmy Butler last year at the draft when he had 2 years of control left. That's not the asking price anymore. Now it's Terry Rozier and picks. In my opinion, it would be Terry Rozier, money to match, which would probably be Marcus Morris, and then picks.
Yeah, then I'd do that then. And you can just send one of them to the bench, one of the young guys.
I would too. Pete, what about you? Would you do the Jimmy Butler deal?
I mean, I'd absolutely do it for Terry Rozier and picks. I'm thinking more honestly about Jaylen Brown. I mean, I understand where you guys are coming from. He's, 20? I don't even know if he's 22, maybe 21.
He's 21.
Yeah, so and he has years of control. Jimmy Butler's, something like 28 with 1 year left. But for me, a lot of people, when Jaylen Brown, after his first season, they were saying his ceiling could be Jimmy Butler. And now they're saying that his ceiling is probably Jimmy Butler, but it's probably higher than that now. For me, I agree with that, but in the same sense, there's still that uncertainty. And I know Jimmy Butler is probably at the best that he's ever going to be at right now. But for me, also, Kyrie wants to play with Jimmy Butler. So if you're making Kyrie happy for this season, that you have a better chance of signing him to an extension next offseason. If Jimmy Butler stays in Minnesota or goes wherever, decides to opt out, Kyrie decides to opt out, they're going to say, fuck it, I'm going to go to New York and said something like that. That's what freaks me out the most is you're going to get a really, really good player that's going to help you right now, and you're going to make your superstar happy. I don't think that you need to unload every single asset that you have in order to get him too, so that Anthony Davis pipe dream is probably still available. I mean, it ultimately matters what the asking price is. But for me, I think I'd do Jaylen Brown. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm leaning towards that I would trade him.
You see, Jaylen Brown's a tall ask, and part of it is like you said, we know that Jaylen Brown, like factually, objectively speaking, but we also know that that minimum you have 1 year of control over Jimmy Butler, and then you could lose him. Whereas you have significantly more control over Jaylen Brown. You know how long he's going to be there, and you can develop him yourself. So that's an important thing. But the other thing that I didn't talk about that I'm glad you brought up because I forgot to talk about it was the Kyrie factor. They are good friends. They have talked about playing together before. So if bringing Jimmy Butler helps you keep Kyrie, then even if it's at the expense of Jaylen Brown, maybe it's worth it. Ryan, would you consider Jaylen Brown? Because I know you're like me and you don't want to move him, but if moving Jaylen Brown gets Jimmy Butler here and getting Jimmy Butler here helps keep Kyrie here, is that something that you'd be interested in?
It's tough. I mean, the Kyrie factor makes it a little bit more intriguing, but I'm still going to go on the no side. I'm going to pass. I think having control of Jaylen Brown for 2 years, and you have the restricted rights on him to add another couple more years after that, develop him for years to come. And he's shown vast improvement. He jumped to, 14.5 points a game on 39% from three. Very athletic and showed promise as a defender. And a knock I have on Jimmy Butler is that he's approaching the age of 30. He's played in Tom Thibodeau's system for a long time, even in his Chicago days. And Thibodeau likes to play his guys a lot of minutes. That's a lot of mileage on Jimmy Butler, and that's a concern going from a long-term perspective.
That is valid. The thing with Jimmy Butler that we forget, because he's only been a star so recently, is that he was in the league for a few years before he became as relevant as he was. He was a late bloomer, and he stayed in college for significantly longer than a lot of people do now. Like, I'm pretty sure Jaylen Brown's 21 now. I'm pretty sure that when Jimmy Butler's 21, he was still at Marquette. So there's a lot of miles on his body, and that's a reasonable thing to bring up. I think I would really like to avoid dealing Jaylen Brown, especially since I don't think you have to get him. Like, you shouldn't need to deal Jaylen Brown to get Jimmy Butler, especially if it ends up being a deadline situation. Then you definitely shouldn't. Then you would be foolish to do that. But if it happens in the offseason, I still don't think you need to deal Jaylen Brown. Any more thoughts on Jimmy Butler, or do we want to jump into the rest of free agency? Because we had a wild first 72 hours of free agency this year.
Well, the last thing I'll say on Jimmy Butler is I think ultimately it just comes down to price and how the Celtics view the players that they have, if they're good enough to win a championship, and what they think they need to get in order to get on the level of the Warriors. So if the Celtics think that they need a player like Anthony Davis, then I'd stay away from Jimmy Butler. But if they think that they really have their young core and the guys that they need in order to win a championship are already on the roster, and maybe they're a player with a little bit more talent away from giving the Warriors a real run, I'd do it now. And because, like you said, you're making Kyrie happy. Jimmy Butler will probably sign an extension with the team. I mean, it all makes a lot of sense, especially when we're talking about a guy that's been rumored with this team for so long. That's the last thing I got, though. Other than that, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. It's wild, all the rumors that have come out in, 8 hours about this? I mean, it just came out of nowhere.
Well, I mean, that's the NBA. It's fast and loose, buddy. Let's move on to the fucking rapid fire from the free agency period. Let's start off with Paul George, who I gave Paul George some shit earlier because he signed on to do some sort of 3-part docuseries with ESPN documenting his free agent experience. And when I heard he was doing that, I'm like, you fucking fraud. Everyone knows you're signing with LA. This is pointless. Like, there's no point watching the series. Like, this is like watching 48 Hour Mystery if at the beginning of the show they tell you who the killer is. Like, no one should watch that. And then he pulled a complete heel turn and actually ended up signing with Oklahoma City. And he announced it at a house party at Russell Westbrook's, which I thought was fucking hilarious. Ryan, what do you think about the whole Paul George situation?
That caught me by surprise. When I heard he was doing the ESPN documentary, I thought it was set up for him to go to a new place, because why would you have a documentary if he's going to stay in the same location? So just the fact that alone really caught me off guard, and really surprising he stayed in OKC.
Did you see Brian Windhorst talking about Paul George signing with Oklahoma City? He was very, very flustered because, as we know, he goes wherever LeBron goes. And I think Windy thought that since Paul George wasn't going to LA, maybe LeBron's not going to go to LA. And he was very scared that he might have to stay another year in Cleveland, Ohio. It was very funny. He was like visibly flustered. Like, he just walked up half a flight of stairs sweating, kind of flustered. So that was a funny little side note to that. But Pete, what do you think about the general Paul George situation?
I mean, it's an awesome story. You have a guy, and he had more comments today. He made them right before the show started, so I didn't get to look at them. But it's pretty much the perfect scenario for Oklahoma City of what you hope will happen when you traded for him. They're going to be able to bring in a guy that really didn't want to be here, had his eyes set on going to LA, and then did a complete 180. He fell in love with the city, fell in love with the team, and signed that contract that you wanted. In a lot of ways, it's similar to what I think Boston and other teams that maybe Philly that are looking at Kawhi Leonard hope will happen with him if he gets traded this offseason. So for me, I mean, I like to see it. And again, I need more parity in the league. I know we talked about it a lot with the Warriors. You know what team is going to maybe not necessarily win the finals, but definitely is going to be there and represent the Western Conference. In the East, I think it's the Celtics right now. But the league needs more parity. And OKC, I mean, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, I mean, that's a good 1-2. Carmelo Anthony completely fucks that all up, so it pretty much needs nothing. But, I mean, those two, that's a really good 1-2 punch. So if you can get another guy, I mean, you're in good position.
Yeah, it's just a super interesting situation. Last year, even though we knew the Warriors were going to win, it was really fun during the offseason because so many people were moving. Like Butler went to the Timberwolves, Kyrie came to Boston. Paul George went to Oklahoma City. Like there was so much movement. And this year, other than LeBron, that's a big fucking statement. But and LeBron, fuck, I'm disgusting. I've been watching much Rick and Morty.
This is why we don't get views. God damn it.
I'm sorry, guys. For the 3 people that actually watched this far into the video, I apologize. But there just hasn't been enough. There hasn't been a lot of movement this year, and it's not appropriate to expect the kind of crazy movement we had last year. Last year was a fucking frenzy, but it's a letdown after what we saw last year and how little movement there's really been in terms of big names, especially since there were so many big trade names on the trading block, and we've barely seen any of them move.
I will say, too, the one thing that I think Chris Mannix said it maybe. The one thing that's interesting about OKC is that Kevin Durant only signed that 1+1 deal with the player option for year number 2. So we could be in this exact same situation again in a year with Kevin Durant opting out. Maybe he'll stay with the Warriors, but Chris Mannix said, I think it was him, I can't remember, but he said that he may think that Kevin Durant would go back to Oklahoma City. So if you have Kevin Durant, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, I mean, that's definitely putting a significant dent in the Warriors' armor, at least in my opinion.
I agree. But to be fair, I think it's more likely that he would go to LA just because he's comfortable being just a complete fucking snake. So why not be the snakiest snake you can possibly snake?
Enjoying the ride.
Ryan, do you have any more thoughts on Paul George, or should we move into CP3 and how he's fucking crippled the Houston Rockets?
Not so much Paul George, but for OKC, they did sign Nerlens Noel to a $2.5 million deal. That's a good buy low piece, I think, for that team.
Oh, how about fucking Nerlens Noel? Wasn't he set to make 70 at 40?
Yeah.
And he decided to not take it, and now he's making 2 at 2.5 or some shit, right? Like I don't wish ill upon anybody because I'm a wonderful person, but I can't help but smile watching a guy who is so confident for no reason. Like, Nerlens Noel was okay, but he was never, ever going to get 4 at 70 ever again in his life. So it's funny because in the grand scheme, as long as he's not an idiot, the difference between 5 million and 30 million, if you live a not like disgusting lifestyle, is minimalistic in terms of what you actually can live like, as long as you are responsible. But with these NBA players, they're not, but whatever. Fucking
professional athletes.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of professional athletes have like shout out to Vince Young, but I don't know what he's doing right now, and that's sad because hook him. Thank you. Well, speaking of using your money irresponsibly, let's talk about Chris Paul, who just got a disgusting deal from Houston. He signed a 4-year deal. I think it's worth 150 something, right? I
think, isn't it?
He's going to be. I think it's 150 something, and it goes up every year. It's a 10% increase, and he's going to make 44 million as a 37-year-old point guard. That's foul. Like that offends me on a deeply personal level. But Ryan, what are your thoughts on CP3 going back to Houston on such a bloated contract?
Yeah, I think it was around 4 years, 160. And with Chris Paul, he's a guy that he still has an impact, but I think his value is a little overestimated at this point. I don't think he's the same player he was. And again, at 37, 38 years old, you're going to be paying him $44 million. That's absurd. And with the cap at this point where cap space is drying up around the league, and it was just like next year, but you can't predict it a couple of years down the road. And that could hurt them big time.
Yeah, this could be a contract that ends up crippling the entire team. Are they going to be able to resign Trevor Ariza? Did they end up reaching an agreement?
He went somewhere else. He went
to... So it cost him Trevor Ariza, and say what you want about Trevor Ariza, but he was an important piece on that team. So it's already having an effect because they had to resign him to this crazy contract. Pete, what are your thoughts on Chris Paul?
Well, it's not even my thoughts on Chris Paul. It's more about the Rockets in general. Like, I pretty much think that they're fucked. You just signed this guy to 40.
I think that's a fair statement to say. I think that's reasonable and sound.
Because they're paying Chris Paul 40-something million. James Harden's going to get a ton of money. They said they're going to match whatever Clint Capella gets offered by the Lakers or whoever the hell is going to offer him any money. So you have all your money in those three guys, and they're clearly not good enough to beat the Warriors. Even though I think if Chris Paul is healthy, I think Houston wins last Western Conference Finals. But, I mean, I don't know if they're ever going to be able to get back to that point. So be interesting to see what happens next season and beyond when all these guys get older.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation to see how it ends up, because this year they should be fine, but it'll be interesting to see 2-3 years down the road how this contract and whatever Clint Capella ends up getting affects them, because it could be this could be devastating to them. Like, they could really fucking ruin this team that had a lot of promise and has for a while. So I'll be really interested to see how this actually shapes up. All right, so it's around 11:15. We're around 40 minutes in. Do we have any more thoughts? Do we want to get into a little grab bag stuff? You know what? I want to talk about this brawl. I want to talk about the Australia versus the Philippines basketball full-on fist fight. This made Malice the Palace look like a fucking Pop Warner football game. Like, this was insane. Australia and Philippines international basketball teams were playing in some sort of FIBA qualifying match. Somebody on the Philippines throws a bit of an elbow and a bit of a knee to the dick. And so, obviously, an Australian player, being the big dick sons of bitches that they are, decide to throw a fucking elbow at the guy. And when he does this, I think the entire country of the Philippines, I just think the whole Philippines just came off the bench, out of the floorboards, and just attacked every single Australian player on the court they could find. And the sneaky part, I mean, it's not sneaky because it was pretty well covered. Thon Maker was playing in this game. He's a legitimate NBA player. He was running around the court throwing these weird, like, gazelle-like flying knees at everybody. Like, this is a 7-footer who's jumping up in the air to throw a knee at somebody. Like, you punch down. You don't have to jump up so you can knee people in the face. Like, you could keep your hand at waist level and just, like, dead arm around, and you'll hit people in the face. I don't know why he felt the need to try and practice his Muay Thai that he must have learned playing Brazil in whatever FIBA qualifier he played before this. But I thought the whole situation, especially considering how pansy ass all the fights in the NBA are, this was a jarring experience to watch, and it was fantastic. Pete, what were your thoughts about this?
Well, I thought Thon Maker looked like fucking Danielson from the Karate Kid, but like he jumped so like violently towards the Philippines guys that he like almost jumped over somebody. So for that was nuts. But I think this happens in every single professional sports fight that we see, is that the retaliatory whatever punch, kick, whatever it is the one that always gets highlighted. So the Philippines does something, you know, a little nasty, stupid, dirty, whatever, and then Australia just goes to fucking town on them. And then, like you said, the entire country of the Philippines, or what, I don't even know. I don't even know the fucking country. And I'm supposed to be smart, but yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, I think an underrated part, and I hope I'm not stealing a take from Ryan, but my favorite part was at the very beginning of the fight, when the referees try to get in between these two like 7-foot-tall giants, and like the referees are 5'8" and trying to push these two apart, and out of nowhere, this 5'9" or 5'10" Filipino point guard, I assume, comes flying into the Australian guy, cocks his right hand back, and then throws a left hand jab in the guy's face, like he's trying to fake him out. I was like, what the fuck is this? What is going on right now? Ryan, I know you watched the fight. How could you not? What were your thoughts on it?
Well, I don't know what this game was. I see like a alert on my phone. What is the Olympic qualifiers? I don't know the Philippines
So
is basketball.
FIFA. It's basketball FIFA, except slightly less corrupt.
So yeah, the Philippines, I had no idea they had a team. I did not know Thon Maker was Australian whatsoever. And there he is, like, drilling guy in the knees and kicking up.
Clean kick.
I don't know what was going on. It was a complete mess. And this is not something you see in basketball now. Usually it's not this far, but it was.
We haven't seen this since the Malice at the Palace. And none of us were, I don't think any of us were really watching basketball when that happened. This has been about 15 years in the making. And I'm glad we finally got one, even if it was some qualifying match in international basketball. Like, we finally got a real basketball fight.
Well, it's wild to think how much coverage this got, considering that it was considering
the whole country fighting.
I'm trying to be a gentleman now. I'm holding in my belches, and it's causing me to cough and almost vomit. This is what I get for trying to be a gentleman. This is the price of manners.
Anyways, so FIFA or whatever. Yeah, FIFA, right? FIFA's going on right now.
FIBA.
No, FIFA. Soccer. Like
the fucking World Cup, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going on right now. I don't give a shit about that. So think about how little I have to give, in the entire country gives a shit about FIBA. And for that to get that much attention, I mean, that's pretty great.
It's something special. All right, I think we've had a pretty good show. It was really sad at the start, but then I started drinking and it got a lot better. Stay in school, kids. Don't make the same mistakes I did.
Don't be doing podcasts at, what time is it? 10:50 on a Tuesday.
10:50 on a Tuesday, and I've had 4 drinks. So we'll roll into final takes. For those of you who are unfamiliar, in case you made it this far, final takes are hopefully definitively answered questions that we'll have an answer to by our next podcast. And for every question that the drinking parties or until Pete gets a fucking job, me, get wrong, I have to do a disgusting drink at the start of the show to affect my knowledge and presentation.
I think it helps, actually.
You think it helps? I'm glad you think that I'm more functional as a drunk than as a sober person. That's good. I'll tell you.
Agree, right?
I'll tell my boss that. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. But let's move into final takes. First off, this has just been our battle cry for all 3 shows. Kawhi Leonard, does he get moved before our next show, which we expect to be the 6th, but you never know? Ryan, you first.
No.
No? You're finally on the no train with me?
No, I'm on a no train.
Yeah. Any reason, or do you think it's at a point where he's probably not going to get moved? Do you think he's going to get moved at all? This isn't part of the question, but do you think he's going to get moved at all in the offseason?
I think he will get moved eventually, but as of now, we're hearing reports that the suitors are shrinking and that Kawhi is just really being picky as where he wants to go. And now we're hearing maybe the Clippers might be involved in this.
Did you see? It just came out right before we started the show. Shout out to Mikey for sharing it in the chat. Shams, I believe it was, shared a post that Kawhi Leonard isn't necessarily interested in joining the Celtics because he doesn't want to be part of a super team.
So why the fuck does he want to join LA? I don't get that.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing. Like I understand. Like every player at some point has that moment where like, ooh, I'm not going to be part of the super team. I'm going to be different. If you want to win the NBA now, you have to be on a super team. That's just how it works. So this either means that he's in a delusional state where he doesn't understand that, or he doesn't care about winning. Either way, it makes me a little bit more apprehensive about possibly trading for him. I don't know about you guys, but it kind of affects my opinion a little bit at least.
Well, I think if the only way I'd want him now is if you get him for pennies on the dollar, which it's kind of shaping up like that may be what happens. So maybe you don't have to give up Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum for him. Maybe you can give him, Marcus Morris, Rozier, and picks. It'd be awesome if you didn't even have to give the Sacramento pick.
Yeah, I think Ryan made a good point. I don't think he gets traded anytime soon now. I think this is a really late summer trade, if at all. especially since he's threatening to not play at all for San Antonio. That's how bad it's gotten. So at the beginning of this saga, I was kind of skeptical as how bad the relationship actually had gotten. It's very clearly at the point where there's very little to be done to save this relationship between Popovich and Leonard. So I think he does get traded eventually. But as for in the next 4 days, I don't think so. I think this is a late July, mid-August kind of trade. Like one that just kind of comes out of nowhere when the NBA is kind of dying down for the summer to pick it back up. But Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't think he's going to get traded anytime soon. And I do think, though, that he will get traded before the start of the season because there's no shot that he, like he said, there's no shot that he plays for San Antonio. And he needs to play, I think, in order to get that type of contract for next season. Or,
yeah, if he doesn't play, he could be looking at a Boogie Cousins situation where someone has to sign him to a low-money one-year deal to prove that he still wants to play basketball at all. Like, I wouldn't put it out of the realm possibility that he might just quit. Like, I don't think he will. But I wouldn't, like, if he did, I would be surprised, but I wouldn't say this came out of nowhere. Like, this is, like, it had been something that had been brewing for, 2 years at that point. Like, he clearly has some hang-up with the Spurs, and if it's a Spurs-related thing, like, if it's a Popovich thing, like, if he's got the fucking Cassius Marsh syndrome where he's like, oh, I'm not having enough fun, like, then fine, go to the fucking Phoenix fucking Suns. You might have some more fun there on a team that wins 30 games a year. But if this is a problem with him in playing basketball, then I wouldn't be shocked if we just don't see him anymore at some point. Like,
that's a wildly warm take.
It's not a take that I'm willing to commit to, but it's something. But it's something that just crossed my mind. Like, this could be like a take my ball and go home kind of situation with Kawhi.
This is why we drink during the show.
This is exactly why we drink during the show. This was the whole onus of the show. This was the mission statement of the show, is drink until you say something stupid, and eventually something stupid becomes reality. That was the whole point of this entire show.
Yep.
Let's move on to question 2. Speaking of stupid, we're going to talk about Isaiah Thomas a little bit. The reports at this hour are that Isaiah Thomas is working on a deal with the Orlando Magic. I would imagine that it's going to be a 1-year prove-it kind of deal. So I'll ask you, Pete, do you think that Isaiah Thomas makes above the mid-level exception this year? And just for reference, for those who don't know, Boogie Cousins made mid-level exception for luxury tax player exemptions, which is 5.3. For teams that are not in the luxury tax, the mid-level exception is around $8 million and change. So, Pete, does Isaiah Thomas make over, under, or under the mid-level exception this year?
I think he's going to make over. If you're talking about Golden State or the Lakers or the Celtics or a team like that where you come in, prove it type of deal, you come off the bench or whatever as a six man, I'm thinking of the Celtics here. He makes $8.3 million, has a great season, and then gets a huge contract. But I think that Orlando is going to have him be a starter, and if he's like that, then they're paying him for what he was in the past. So I think I bet he makes like 10 or 12 or something like that. Definitely 1-year deal though.
Okay. I'm being boring, but I agree. I think he'll make around 12 to $14 million this year if he ends up with Orlando. If this falls through and he ends up playing for a contender, I think it could be mid-level. But if he does end up signing this deal, and to this point we have not gotten confirmation that he has signed any deal, but if he does end up signing this deal, I think it'll be 1 year around 12 or 14 million. Brian, what do you think?
Well, yesterday I was hearing reports that he might not get anything over $3 million on a 1-year deal. And then I did hear the report that the Magic are working on a deal with him, and a team like the Magic have some space to work with. So I can see him getting maybe $8 to $10 million a year. So I'd say over. You
think over as well. You're a little bit on the low end compared to me and Pete, but you think still over.
Yep.
Okay. Last one, just to be a dick, because I know Pete has no chance at this one. Who is going to lead the Celtics in scoring in their opening game of the Summer League against Philadelphia on Friday night? Pete, you go first so that you don't get any benefit of knowing who we know is on the roster.
I don't know. I know one person on the roster. No, two. The Robert Williams kid who probably won't show up, so I can't pick him. And then the Wanamaker kid. So I'm going to say him.
You think Brad Wanamaker?
Yep. The whatever MVP, whatever fucking league he played for.
Okay. I don't even know if Brad Wanamaker's on the Summer League team. I honestly don't. He could be. He could not be.
I don't know his first name, so.
I'm going to go with Jabari Bird because the big players on the team are Gershon Yabusele, the dancing panda, and Robert Williams, Bobby Bill, as I like to call him. And none of the, Gershon Yabusele is a decent scorer, but against Philly, where I expect they're going to have closer to an NBA team on their Summer League team, I don't think he's going to score as much, whereas Jabari Bird is a pretty decent scorer, and I just think for whatever reason he plays a position where if he's going up against Fultz, I think he can torch him. So I'm going to go with Jabari Bird being the leading scorer, even though he's the point guard. The other pick I was going to make might have been Kadeem Allen, but I'm going to go with Jabari Bird. What do you think, Ryan?
I'm going to go different. I'm going to go Semi Ojeleye.
That's another good pick. I like that pick. Explain why.
NBA experience. He's shown that he can score at the NBA level, and in the second year, we might see his growth. He's the guy that had a lot of upside. Former Duke commit, went to SMU out of transfer, and he showed some promise with some spot-up threes. And being a man amongst boys, he's a really strong-build guy. I think he can take advantage of some young players in this league.
Yep, I think it's a valid statement. So I guess this was a really good show. We capped out at around an hour. It's going to be really interesting to see how our predictions end up going. I personally hope I get all three wrong, just so I can be an absolute mess in the next show. But until then, I thought the show went pretty well. We got some interesting predictions going on. We have a lot of stuff to talk about next week. We're going to jump on Friday. We're going to talk a lot more Celtics in general. We have a lot of stuff. Aaron Baines, Bobby Bill, Brad Wanamaker. We're going to talk about all of it next on Friday, but we wanted to get all the NBA free agency stuff out of the way first. So that's gonna be the show for us. We're gonna let this play out, and I hope everyone enjoys their week. Have a happy 4th of July, which is tomorrow. And don't do what Ryan does because Ryan's not allowed to drink. Do what you need to and get your sponsors drunk and put yourself on the internet. Thanks, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful night. And go Celtics. Bye.
Happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday, America. Exactly right, Pete. That's it.